Good evening. It is now one of our country's most high-profile social issues. Young people, sometimes children, out late at night committing ram raids, smash and grab robberies by the carful. So how do we get here? What's driving this spike in youth crime, and what will it take to re-engage these children? Well, joining me now is Chris Hipkins, Minister of Police and Education. Minister, youth crime, are we calling this a crisis yet? It is a crisis, isn't it?
Well, actually, what we're seeing, if you look at the official crime statistics, actually youth crime has been trending down for a number of years now, but what we're seeing is a changing nature in the youth crime that is taking place. So we're seeing it's more high profile, it's more designed for social media, so we're seeing young people involved in this escalating pattern of behaviour that's really designed to create notoriety for themselves. They're out there to make a name for themselves in not a good way. But overall, the rates of youth crime are going down. But what we're seeing, of course, is that there is this small group who are creating a lot of noise, and that is a problem.
Are those youth crime rates really going down, though, Minister? Because I'm not sure that the 7-year-old or the 11-year-old who are out committing some of these crimes will actually turn up in those youth crime statistics because they're not being prosecuted. The system's not set up for them, is it? So do we really have any idea how bad it is out there?
Oh, well, I think, look, there's clearly a challenge with getting these young people more engaged in something that's positive. And so I don't want to minimise the impact of what's happening at the moment. It is concerning, and it is something that we do need to do more about. As Minister of Education, this was actually something that I've spent a bit of time over the last year and a half or so looking at, because in the post-COVID era, or as we've worked our way through the COVID era, we've seen a number of kids who have dropped out of the education system, and we haven't been able to re-engage them either back into education or into something else, whether that be employment or training or something else that's going to lead them into a positive pathway rather than a pathway that leads to criminal offending. And so I think we do need to look at what more we can do to re-engage those young people, and I think the police can play a role here. So in my first few days as Minister of Police, I got a report from police about some work that they're doing on a program called Operation Engage, which is about getting kids back into school. It is this hardcore group, the hard-to-reach group, that we need to really focus our energies on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, so is that attendance issue? There are 300,000 kids who are not regularly attending school, 60,000 who are turning up less than 70%, Minister, and then there's those 80-odd thousand who are not in any education, employment or training. Those are big numbers.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that we've broken those numbers down is it's easy to get alarmed by the very large number, but actually when we understand a little bit more what's behind that, there can often be explanations. So if you think about a school term being 10 weeks long, a child who's away from school for more than 1 week isn't going to hit the 90% attendance target. So if a family takes their kid away for an overseas holiday, for example, and this does happen, and they decide to do it during term time because that's when tickets and hotels and so on are cheaper, and then they were away for a week, and then that child's away for one other day, then suddenly they'll become a statistic in a bad way.
Sure, Minister, but there are 60,000 who are turning up less than 70%. 60,000 by your own numbers who are turning up less than 70%.
Oh, absolutely, and so that's one of the reasons that we have broken that down, because I think we need to really understand what the issue is, and that 70,000, and then the next number down from that, which is the students who are not engaged at all, so they're not showing up at all. That's the group that we've really got to focus our time and energy on.
And where do you find them? Where are you going to find them to re-engage them? How do we get them re-engaged? Because that is the key. That is the key to this youth crime problem. One of them, anyway, isn't it?
I think it is, and it's not going to be through things necessarily through punitive things. It's going to be through making sure that we're hooking them into something that's engaging them positively. And there are some good programs and some good examples of that. So I'll just give you an example because it's in my own electorate and I'm familiar with it. In my own area, we've got a thing called the Billy Graham Boxing Academy, and it gets kids engaged in something outside of school hours. But evaluations of that have found that the kids who are doing that are more likely to then be engaged at school during school school hours. So sometimes giving them something positive and constructive to do outside the school gate actually helps with their engagement inside the school gate. And there are plenty of examples of those sorts of programs around the country.
Yes,
so I think what we've got to do is say, well, what can we do? What can we do to expand those opportunities? What can we learn from those about, how we can really get these kids hooked in?
Yeah, and it is a big job that you've got ahead of you, isn't it, Minister?
Yeah, and it's not going to be one single thing. Let's be realistic about this. Across the breadth and depth of all of the issues that we're grappling with up and down the country, there are going to be different solutions that work for different communities. So I just mentioned one that's worked really well for my community and it's been really positive. But there will be others, and there are plenty of others, and I've seen others in action as well that also help to hook young people into something that's more, constructive.
Yeah, well, it's vital work because we need to re-engage those young people. Thanks so much for joining us in your new capacity as the Minister of Police, Chris Hipkins.